Can't even make this stuff up. Right before I went to film this video, I was gonna go start the car up and make sure everything was working. I had just done some work under the dash. The cluster lights were dead, so replaced them. Went to go turn it on to check the cluster lights, and the cluster was entirely dead. I had also replaced the ignition switch with a brand new one, because it was doing some weird stuff sometimes when you go to start it, and so replaced it just because. It turned out the brand new ignition switch that I had just put in was bad, and I fought with it for about half an hour before I figured out that the brand new ignition switch was actually the entire problem. Welcome back to another video. As you can see here, we have the Mark II, same one as the last video. I had said at the end of last video that I would have this car on another video in the future because it turned into a little bit more of a project than I expected, and so here we are with it today. I did a ton of work to this car, all around all aspects of it, and I'm going to go over all that stuff that I did. But it is a 1.6 turbo diesel, 1986, so it's a small bumper. If you didn't see the last video. And so I'm going to go over some of the stuff that I did do it. Stickers were 2014. It's obviously 2024. So 10 years it was sitting apart. The engine was all disassembled when we got it. Essentially your typical barn find covered in dust and everything else. So went through and started fixing all the stuff that was wrong with it. The first thing that I addressed when I started out with it was the motor. So we'll take a look at that first. Alright, so as I said, under the hood here, I have a Mark II 1.6 motor, turbo diesel, so it has like 68 horsepower instead of 50. So it's a little bit better, but still not that great. When I got it, this was all torn apart, no timing belt on it and everything, and I was told that the timing belt was having a problem where it was shredding the belt, and the belt that I took off was incredibly small, and I'll put a picture up of what it looked like, but the belt was incredibly small. But so basically, once I got the belt back together, and I actually figured out that what the cause, at least from what I can gather, along with the belt rubbing on the side of the lower timing belt cover, was that the gear on the bottom of the crank was loose. The bolt was not incredibly tight, and it was allowing the gear to rotate, and it was all egged out, and the keyway had like the key in it was not the proper size. It was much smaller. I'll insert a picture of that. But so I replaced that with another one that had the proper size and was in good shape. And so I'm guessing that was the culprit of the belt problem. Regardless, the belt problem has been solved as of right now. It's not shredding it anymore. But either way, that was what I figured out. So I put it all back together after that, got it running. It would only stay running for a little bit because the pump shaft seal was leaking terribly. So pulled that apart, got that seal out, and replaced that. After that, got it running. And that was pretty much the last of the major mechanical problems that it was having, because it's run pretty okay overall. I mean, like I said, it's not fast at all, but it's run all right since that. So after I got the motor running and got it working and such, it had absolutely zero brakes at all. So I moved on to addressing that. So the first step of that was obviously establishing where the problem was, which it turned out the lines coming from the master cylinder going back to the rear proportioning valve were bad back up at the proportioning valve. They were all rotted out and leaking. So I had to replace the lines coming from the whole way from the master cylinder all the way to the back. So replace those. The proportioning valve was actually bad as well, so we replaced that too. So another proportioning valve, and then the lines coming from the proportioning valve out to both side wheels, those also needed to be replaced. So I replaced all those. After that, it needed wheel cylinders in the back, so I did both rear wheel cylinders. And since I've done all that, the brakes have been pretty good overall. Another thing that I did to this car, when I got it, the paint did not look like this. Now, granted, the paint is still not that great, and the roof especially, because there is a lack of clear coat and sun cook and whatever. The hood is the worst because this is the only strip of clear coat, and as you can see, it's kind of still coming off. So I did end up buffing and waxing the entire thing just to get it looking a little bit more shiny because it was incredibly, like pasty and looking real bad. So I did end up buffing and polishing the entire car, and it looks too bad as you guys saw in the intro. It looks pretty good. It shined up all right. On these parts that still have clear coat, does not look too bad. But still, definitely, like I said, sun fade and stuff. Still got those problems. But either way, it is what it is. But so that was all the work that I did on the paint. Another thing that I did on this thing was the plastic on the fender flares and on the bumpers and whatnot. This plastic, if you know anything about Mark IIs, tends to go like to a point where it's like white because it gets so faded. You can actually take a torch and you can hover over it with a torch and get it to come back to this black color. I'll insert some pictures of what it looks like before I did the torch thing and then afterwards, and it made a massive difference. Now granted, it's still not 100% perfect. Same with the bumper. Did it on the bumper as well. Definitely not perfect, but it works, and it makes it look a lot better than it did. I don't have a set of brand new flares for this thing, so made it look a ton better than having white flares on the car. And this badge on the front, as well as the badges on the back, is now silver, but it used to be pretty much black, and the reason why it is now silver is because of this silver Sharpie. Did that to make it look a little bit more silver, and it stands out a little bit more when you're looking at the front of the car than it did before. And then also on the back badges, because they were hammered, also did the same thing with them. So that's just a cool little mod did to make it look a little bit better, because I felt as though the turbo diesel badge is pretty cool in the front. You couldn't really see it because when you would stand a distance away from it, if you didn't know it's there, you couldn't even read what it said. So got that taken care of. Outside of that, I also did the heater core inside of it, which if you watched my last video, you would see that I did a full video on how to replace the heater core in one of these, and all the stuff with taping up the box and everything. So now it has heat again finally, so that was really nice. So I also did that. And also there was some suspension work that I had to do. Did front rotors, front pads, because they were not the greatest and would shake a little bit when you stopped. I also did ball joints, and I replaced the left axle because the boot was ripped and I didn't feel like putting it back together. So just replaced the whole entire axle with a used one we had around. Also, I did bunch of exhaust work on it. The downpipe had some problems with it. The clamps in it throughout were leaking, as well as back at the muffler, so took care of all those problems. So now the exhaust is working again. Also, if you didn't see under the hood, I did Mark III battery cables on the factory Mark II, and same with Mark I. They are pretty terrible. So I ended up just replacing them inside the car, if you guys can see, and it's a little dark, but all back together. I mean, obviously I had this whole dash apart and everything for the heater core job, and the reason why it's kind of apart over at the steering column is because I was messing with the ignition cylinder and the ignition switch, as I mentioned earlier. But the interior is in pretty good shape overall. Car overall is not bad. Cleaned up really well. The car drives quite nice now. It has, I mean, it runs probably about as much power as you're going to feel out of this motor. It's a fun little car to, I have the 1.8 Turbo Rabbit truck, and that thing is a blast because it's super fast. But this car there is definitely something to be said about a slow Volkswagen cruising around, because it is definitely still a blast to drive. And I have put, probably a little over 100 miles on this car in the time that I've had it around. And I've had a blast driving it, just ripping around, you're doing 60 miles an hour, and it feels like going really fast, but really that you're going as fast as it'll go. But there are still a couple more things that need addressed with this car. For instance, power steering leak. It's got exhaust rattle. Obviously, the ignition switch, I now need another one. So hopefully that one isn't bad too. But, so I have to take care of that. There's just some other miscellaneous stuff here and there. I got to get it inspected and whatnot. But this car, it was, it was a little project. It is going to be for sale. So I'm not going to be keeping it. But it was a fun little project to put together. And turned into less of a little project and more of a large project the more work I did, since there's more things that I have worked on than I haven't in this entire car. So, but either way, it was nonetheless a still a fun project. All right, so that's pretty much going to be a wrap on this video. Also wanted to mention, I said that there were going to be some changes going on in the shop, and I was not kidding. Did some stuff got a ton of stuff out here. We're going to be having a lot more room to work and a lot more opportunity for some more projects in the future. I hope to see you all in the next one. The next video is going to be one to watch out for. It is going to be the video about my Rabbit truck, which I have been looking forward to making for quite a while. So that's definitely going to be one you don't want to miss. So keep an eye out for that. If you want to get notified when I post new videos, such as the Rabbit truck video, there's a little bell underneath the video that you can push, and then that will notify you when I post. Also, throw this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more in the future, because that's the best way to know when I post something new. But with that's going to be a wrap on this one. I appreciate you all for watching, and stay tuned for the next one. Peace.